Okay, so I know, of course, persons will be interested to know whether for COVID-19 it is possible to get reinfections. So the issue is this: of the 23 million plus people who've been infected by COVID-19, we now see that, yes, there seems to be the possibility of someone being reinfected. But let me break this down for you. First of all, you have to look at it from a population perspective. So it's between 1 and 3 people we're talking about. We know that when any person who gets COVID-19, their body mounts an immune response to the virus. So that whether you are asymptomatic, whether you have mild disease, whether you have severe disease, your body produces something called antibodies that fight off the disease. What seems to be the case so far from the literature is that, remember I said on a previous program that just like H1N1, the flu viruses, they change a little. It appears that this may have been the case, that it's a slightly different variant, but it is not dangerous. Also, or it's not, if the person goes on to develop it fully again, which we don't know yet from the literature. We also don't know about the immune response that has been mounted to this, what appears to be a second round of COVID-19. So we know it may be possible. We are still investigating because this is a relatively rare thing. As you can see, research is going on. And they've documented the strain that has caused this apparent reinfection, but we don't know how long when someone mounts an immune response. The research so far has shown that we do have antibodies, but what we don't know 8 months into COVID-19 is whether this is going to be over a long period of time or not. So yes, it's possible, but it is not conclusive that the person has not mounted a strong immune response, and we still don't know how long we remain immune for.
And you mentioned antibodies. What does it mean when you say we have antibodies? Break that down for the person who may not understand what it means.
Okay, so our bodies are absolutely amazing things. Our blood is incredible, that keeps us alive. The blood of people who've had any disease, so we're talking about COVID-19 now, the blood contains something called immune system molecules. And for those who haven't reached that far in school yet, they wouldn't know what a molecule is, but it's a very, 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 very tiny particle made up of 2 atoms. And in that immune system molecule, it produces something called neutralizing antibodies, or a material that actually is capable of rendering the disease ineffective. And then you have 2 types of cells in the body as well, the B cell and the T cells, that also attack disease. So our bodies are designed, otherwise the human race would have been wiped out. Our bodies are designed to fight disease. So when a disease attacks the human body, it mounts this response, which we call an immune response. And as part of that immune response, it produces antibodies. So anti is against that body, that virus that enters the human body. So our blood is set up to detect and to attack any foreign substance that comes in, any foreign virus in this case that comes in, that will harm us or kill us. So this is what an antibody is. It is like, imagine you going into war and you have your shield and your sword and so on. So your antibodies are those things that help you to fight off disease.
But the presence of antibodies, it also indicates that you would have had the virus. Let's assume you had it but didn't realize that you had it, but you test positive for antibodies. Does this mean that you would have had it previously? Is that an indication of you having it previously?
Yes, it does. But we are not always 100% sometimes clear after, say, it's 2 weeks or so. There are different markers that would tell you whether it is COVID-19 or not that you've had. We're getting better at identifying it, because you could have had the flu virus and you mount an antibody response, and they can find, of course, an immune response, so they find antibodies. But there are certain markers that would allow scientists to identify whether you've had COVID-19 or not. So once your body produces these antibodies, yes, it's one of the things that we're able to do. And I think that's why research is now being done in some countries to identify what percentage, or they would take a sample of the people who've had COVID-19 to see, to have a rough estimate of what percentage of the population may have had COVID-19. So yes, you can use antibody tests, serological tests they're called, to identify whether someone has been exposed to COVID-19, regardless of the severity or not of their symptoms.
I have a quick question, Dr. Wheeler. And when it comes to the reinfections, is it known right now that it's the same strain of the virus, or is it possible that it is another strain that they've been infected with?
It seems as if apparently there has been some research done, because Hong Kong has very sophisticated laboratories, that it is a slightly different strain. Imagine this. Remember, we have a flu vaccine every year, right?
Right, yes.
So it means when we have the flu vaccine every year, it's not the same vaccine that we have every year, because there's a certain amount of drift in that virus, because it is a living thing, it's organic, it does not remain static. This is why all viruses are so good at infecting and reinfecting persons. So from all accounts so far, it appears to be a slightly different strain of the virus. And so maybe that is why it has shown the capacity to reinfect, but it doesn't mean that the person would have the same level of the disease in terms of severity. And what they also have to track is then what we're talking about, the immune response to this second infection. But again, let's put it in perspective. We have 23 plus million cases of COVID-19 globally now. So we are talking about a minuscule number of people. So we have to look at this from a population perspective. So we don't have nearly enough research to know from a population perspective whether this is something that is going to be commonly seen or whether this is an outlier. Because remember, every human being is constructed differently. We're not all the same.
Dr. Wheeler, let's switch gears a little bit. We just have a few more minutes left. The Ministry of Health indicated recently that persons who have mild symptoms will quarantine from home. How do you see that working?
Well, Lisa, this is what you have to do, especially in countries where there is community spread and there is a danger of the health system becoming overwhelmed. It is possible to have persons quarantine at home. What is challenging is to ensure that persons remain at home, because imagine if you have very mild very mild symptoms of COVID-19. If you are in a situation where your environment, your home environment, allows you to self-isolate, right? So it's big enough that you can be in a separate room, you can shower separately, use different utensils, stay away from your family members. You won't get it. The most important thing, though, is that you do have to remain in quarantine and not go out shopping, go to the bank, do all the things that you will normally do. So the government will look into how you do that, because in other countries, what has been done is you can either check on those persons through means of calling them at random times. Of course, I believe there's now a quarantine act that allows government to, there's certain regulations. So if you break your quarantine, you do have penalties for
Yeah.
that. But you can also monitor persons electronically, which they have done in other countries as well. So you can have both the person, the means of monitoring someone in person by calling them up and checking at random times, or you can use electronic means. But yes, it is possible, but there has to be some tracking of persons to ensure that they do remain in quarantine and they don't break quarantine. Otherwise, of course, we expose ourselves to continuing community spread.
Yeah. All right, we're going to have to leave it there, Dr. Wheeler. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. You bring so much insight into this whole COVID-19 situation. Thank you. I know we're going to check in with you again, but you continue to keep safe as well.
You too. Have a great day.
You too.